This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're considering the potential of curtailing or amending the green goals written to state law as part of the 2019 Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act in New York. And our guest is Senate Environmental Conservation Committee Chair Pete Harckham, a Westchester County Democrat. So given that the Hochul administration is already ignoring some elements of the 2019 CLCPA and has acknowledged that some of the other statutory goals, when it pertains to, say, emissions reductions or green energy creation, are not achievable, what do you see as the practical effect of potentially amending this law, other than basically bringing the state into alignment with what the governor is already prioritizing?
First of all, the legislature has said this is the priority. The CLCPA is the law of the land. As you mentioned, certain aspects are not being implemented. We're 2 years behind on Cap and Invest. But New Yorkers are already spending billions to address climate change annually. Healthcare costs, insurance costs, taxes, dealing with infrastructure, higher utility rates because of resiliency needs. So we're already paying for this. So when they say to address climate change is a noble effort or whatever the phrase they used, it's not. It's an imperative that we need to save folks money now. We need to address climate change now. And the way we do that is through clean energy. Clean energy, a kilowatt of solar, is far cheaper than a kilowatt of natural gas. The New York Independent System Operator did a report a couple weeks ago and said that it is the price of natural gas that is driving high utility prices right now.
Driving wholesale electricity prices.
Right. And so
that only accounts for about a third of a utility bill.
But in the spot market, that is what's causing the spikes. In my district, we have retired seniors who used to have $300 utility bills who right now have $1,400 utility bills. That's because of the spot market, and that's because of the price of natural gas.
Well, it's also part of the delivery side of the bill. I mean, it's not just supply side that's driving the cost there. But we can talk a little bit more about that future energy development. But as it stands right now, we spoke with your Assembly counterpart, Deborah Glick, and she said that she has been briefed on at least some of the tinkering around the margins that the chamber is interested in doing with regards to the CLCPA. Have you been briefed on any of their ideas? And if so, what appears to be on the table as far as you're aware?
Well, we have not received a briefing on what they would like to do. We have had discussions with the chamber on where they think the problems lie. Mm-hmm. We have told them we think that's a mistake from a public policy standpoint. I think it's a mistake from a political standpoint. I think we need to just focus on what we need to do. We have been enormously successful with distributed solar, for instance. In the CLCPA, I have a bill to double the goal from 6 to 20 gigs distributed solar. The answer is the same, whether you're talking about clean energy, whether you're talking about reliability, resiliency, or lowering energy prices. It's clean energy, and that's what we need to focus on. The rest of the world is doing this. 95% of the world's generation last year was renewable. The state of Texas, for the last 10 years, all of their generation, this is a petro state, all of their generation has been in renewables, saved their ratepayers $30 billion. That's what we need to focus on, and not this nonsense put forth by the oil and gas industry that somehow more natural gas and rolling back climate goals is going to lower energy prices.
That line of support, though, for, say, fossil fuels and their role in powering the state doesn't just come from the fossil fuel companies. We've also heard from, you mentioned, the New York Independent System Operator. They've made the case for, say, bringing online some of the older fossil fuel generated facilities into sort of a newer, more efficient model. And they've talked about the need for an all above the approach. So it's not just the fossil fuel companies, so to speak, that are pushing that angle.
The thing about the independent system operator, in their accounting, they are not allowed to account for renewable energy projects that are in the pipeline that are not online yet. So they factor future demand against today's generation. And we know there are over 84 utility scale clean energy projects in the pipeline, which they need to accelerate getting them hooked up, which will power 2.5 million households. We don't need to be talking about repowering our fossil fuel infrastructure. Part of the goal of the CLCPA, especially the dirty peaker plants in New York City, which the ISO itself has said they are unreliable in extreme weather situations. We need wind, we need battery, we need storage. That's more reliable, it's cheaper, and it's much faster to scale than either building new natural gas plants or nuclear.
But when it comes to something like reliability, there's the unreliability of certain renewable development because of, say, the apathy or outright hostility from the federal government as it pertains to something like offshore wind. And then you have reliability issues with something like solar with the winter. We've talked about how when it snows, that creates some problems just in terms of their ability to collect. So why isn't something like trying to repower some of the natural gas facilities in a more efficient way, a cleaner way, a important stopgap as we do look to increase the supply of natural gas, to address supply charges, and to begin to consider, that bridge to that future you're looking for?
Well, the notion that there is a cleaner way to burn natural gas at that scale is a misnomer.
Okay.
The county of Westchester, where I live, which is supposed to be a bucolic county, gets a D from the American Lung Association when it comes to air quality. It's in noncompliance with the Clean Air Act. In addition to the carbon and the methane, we're talking about particulate matter that impacts people's health. It impacts heart disease. It impacts lung disease. It impacts asthma. So a lot of the CLCPA is not just about quote-unquote emissions. It's about improving public health and public health outcomes.
You mentioned earlier the legislature's support for the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. You know your members better than I do, but looking at the landscape and how not just your body has changed, but the atmosphere has changed, I wonder whether something like the CLCPA could pass in 2026 the way it did in 2019. At the same time, though, we've heard from some upstate Democrats who have said, hey, I'm up for some changes to the CLCPA. I think there is some room for changes. So can you talk about your sense of where at least the Senate Democrats are on something like this?
I would question your premise
Sure.
that the CLCPA could not pass in the Senate today.
Okay.
We passed the Packaging Reduction Recycling Infrastructure Act 2 years in a row, an incredibly bold environmental plan. We passed the biosolid moratorium last year. We have a very strong conference when it comes to environmental issues. And right now, I think we're solidly on point that we oppose rollbacks to the CLCPA. What we're insisting on and what we would like to partner with the governor on is new ways to advance clean energy. Let's get Cap and Invest rolling again, which will begin to decarbonize the economy and protect low-income ratepayers. That's what the plan has always been. We just need to follow the plan that we've had.
Following the plan, though, hasn't resulted in our ability to hit some of like our green energy goals for 2030 and what is projected for the future. So what does it mean to have statutory goals in place that we aren't going to hit?
Well, we haven't followed the plan. Cap and Invest should have been implemented 2 years ago. The All Electric Buildings Act is stalled, and those were two major components of what we're trying to do.
But even before that, though, even the NYSERDA and the broader climate had suggested we weren't going to hit some of our transition goals.
Well, I think you're right. Certainly, we do have a setback on offshore wind. That was a big hit. But I don't think we should do Donald Trump's bidding. I think we need to focus on what we can control. Solar is one of those things, and that's been one of the success stories. Mm-hmm. The original goal was 6 gigs of distributed solar. I think we're almost at 10 right now. So I'm proposing that we double that to 20. And let's really have a Marshall Plan on renewables in New York, focusing on things that we can control.
Well, lastly, we brought up the issue of ratepayers and these winter bills that people all across the state are experiencing. Is there anything that you think can be done in the short term to impact those rates? There have been plans floated from Republicans about raiding some of NYSERDA's money that is put aside. Don't know how far that could actually go in supporting people's relief, given how big bills are, and a lot of that money's already committed, and everything else seems to be kind of around the margins. Is there anything you think that can be done in the short term on that front?
Yeah, well, just quickly in addressing this Republican claim that there's all this money just sitting in reserves. No,
Right.
that's committed to programs, and some of that is ratepayer relief programs, energy affordability programs, winter weatherization programs that have been very successful in bringing down bills. What we really need to do is focus on the shareholders who've done very well investing in utility companies. Con Ed has averaged $2 billion profit the last 2 years. It's time that the shareholders not be guaranteed return equity or a guaranteed equity return as they are right now by the PSC. And let's stop putting the burden on the backs of the ratepayers and let the shareholders take some of the burden for a while.
Is that going to create any problems, though, with their ability to secure investments in some of the infrastructure that we want to see utilities spending money on?
They have done very well, and most
We don't need to have a GoFundMe for the utilities?
No, I don't think so. And most if you look at utilities, and most investors invest for the long term. They're not investing for the short term. And you have a couple of years where they only earn $1 billion in profits versus $2 billion in profits. That's still a pretty good return.
Well, we've been speaking with State Senate Environmental Conservation Committee Chair Pete Harckham. He's a Westchester County Democrat. Senator, thanks for visiting us.
Always great to see you. Thanks.
And for more on the Hochul administration's perspective on this issue, here's some excerpts of the governor speaking with reporters on Thursday.
The world has changed dramatically since 2019. I wish it hadn't. I wished all the circumstances and metrics that were looked at back in 2019 had remained consistent. But a pandemic, which disrupted global supply chains, raising the cost of everything we're trying to do to build more clean energy, renewable energy. The inflation drove up costs. I mean, projects that we thought were going to come to fruition were actually shut down or pulled by developers because they weren't going to make money for wind energy. I'm working hard on this, and I really want to do everything I can to address people's real concerns, yes, about the climate, but also about the fact that people's energy costs, it is staggering. And we cannot just tune out those cries for help from New Yorkers who are just getting crushed under the weight of this. I want people to understand what's at stake here. I think there needs to be an education process first. Family living upstate with home heating oil with probably one car, it's an additional $3,500 a year under the plans that are currently proposed.
Where is that number from? Because your budget director cited the same number, but no one seems to know what specifically.
I can get that number for you. I mean, we have the whole metrics. If you're living in an apartment in New York City and you have a heat pump, okay, it's this much. If you're living upstate with 2 cars in Western New York and you have natural gas, we have the whole range. I've been actually sharing this data with the legislature for 4 years, saying that this is what we're facing. And now it's come to a real head this year because the extreme weather drove up costs, but also the fact that I'm fighting Washington to save part of our plan to make that happen. I think everybody has to see it's a variable that we could not have foreseen. I did not expect Donald Trump to cut down some of the major sources of renewable power, wind and solar, like that, just end them. And then I'm supposed to still make up for that somehow. I just need little people to understand what this challenge is. So the legislator and the leadership and I will be working through this.
And for continued coverage of this and other environmental issues, keep track of Capitol Press Room wherever you download podcasts or at capitolpressroom.org.
Join us again for Capitol Press Room, a production of WCNY Connected, Syracuse.